Council, we have a presentation from Ms. Kate Keller from the LLC group of Phillips, Preiss, Grygiel, Lehany, and Hughes regarding the fourth round affordable housing element and fair share plan. Ms. Keller, the floor is yours.
Great. Good evening. Hi, everybody. Mayor, Council. So tonight we are here to discuss the Township's adopted by the Planning Board fourth round housing element and fair share plan. I'm going to give a little bit of a background about the kind of how we got here, going back to the prior rounds of affordable housing, what kind of work we've done thus far on the fourth round, and what you're here to do tonight, which is essentially to endorse the plan just as part of the compliance process, and I'll explain what that means. Just no official action beyond that is being taken tonight. Nothing's being, no zoning amendments, nothing like that is being changed at this time. This is just an endorsement of the initial plan. So we will, I have a presentation that I've put together just to discuss. We're going to go through the introduction of why we're here and what the history is in the township and in New Jersey in general. We're going to go through the timeline that was set for the fourth round of compliance and the process there, how we determine the fourth round obligation number, and then finally the compliance strategy that's proposed for East Brunswick at this time. One thing that I think to keep in mind through this presentation is that this has been a very speedy process as organized by the state, and we are still in the middle of it. We have a plan that we've put together. There's going to be opportunities from from challenges, from things that just change internally, to finesse the plan, to change things in the plan. So this is really just our initial proposed attempt at meeting this obligation. So just going through here, this is something, it's biggest topic around the state much of the time, especially once we're getting into these rounds like we are right now, the affordable housing fourth round here. So just to give a brief history, the definition of affordable housing in New Jersey, and this is really taken from the national HUD and various ways of defining this, but it's a dwelling affordable to a moderate income household, a low income household, or a very low income household. And these are defined as percentages of the regional income limits, and we'll get to briefly what those regions are. So this is, it's a 3-county region that Middlesex County, East Brunswick is a part of, and so the affordability index is based on that. So that's just the initial definition there, so you know what we're talking about when we say affordable housing. And then the big question, why does East Brunswick, why does every municipality in the state have to provide affordable housing? And this goes back to 2 lawsuits that you've probably heard the name of, probably familiar with, Mount Laurel 1, 1975, and then subsequently what was called Mount Laurel 2 in 1983. The initial Mount Laurel decision, which these still stand, this is what forms the basis of the state's Fair Housing Act. The Mount Laurel 1 decision, the court determined that local zoning laws that excluded low-income families, whether that was only by providing single-family zoning, whether that was, not providing opportunity for multifamily or any other type of affordable housing, was exclusionary zoning and violated the state's constitution because it did not provide this realistic opportunity, and it was not equal protection in that sense. So all New Jersey municipalities must plan for, zone, and take affirmative actions to provide for the realistic opportunity for their fair share. And we'll talk a little bit about what those actions look like. That's things like inclusionary zoning, that's providing for units here and there. So that's really what the obligation is still. So then Mount Laurel 2 in 1983 reaffirmed this, and it established the concept of present need, which is the amount of units in the municipality that need to be rehabilitated, and the prospective need, which is new units that each town is obligated to construct in order to meet projections for low and moderate income housing. And Mount Laurel 2 also established what's known as the builder's remedy lawsuits, and I'll explain what that means shortly as well. But that's really provided a mechanism for builders, developers to litigate when a town was not in compliance with their affordable housing regulations. So Fair Housing Act, 1985, the original one, codified these rules, and it created COA, the Council on Affordable Housing. And the goal of COA was that it was going to be an administrative agency that would develop the rules, develop the procedures, set the regulations for municipalities, so that there would be a way that they knew they were following and they were satisfying the obligations. So that's where these housing regions for calculations of the need and income, et cetera, came into play. And it also created a process for reviewing and certifying that the need had been met. So COA was established 1985. So this is one of the results of COA was the establishment of affordable housing regions. So they are based on 2 to 4 counties, typically 3 and 4 now, which exhibit social, economic, income similarities. Obviously, they're also geographically similar. And as seen here, East Brunswick is in Region 3 with Somerset and Hunterdon counties. So when we talk about the fair share that the East Brunswick has to provide, that's the fair share of this region's prospective need for affordable housing. It's not for the whole state because they understand that different counties, different regions have different needs. Like, for example, Deep South, Region 6, it has a different, different types of municipalities than Region 3. So the density, the economic status, things like that. So that's what the housing region is supposed to accomplish. And then here we have, going back to the Mount Laurel 2, what is a builder's remedy? And this is a term that is thrown around a lot, but this is basically what can potentially happen if a town does not comply with their affordable housing requirements. So, and this is a court-imposed site-specific relief where a litigant, that's typically a developer, files a lawsuit against the municipality, and the court typically, if there's no protections in place, will rule in favor of this developer, and what they may be permitted to build has nothing to do with the underlying zoning. It often doesn't have to do with the context of the site. It has to do almost exclusively with what the housing need is determined to be. So this is something you want to avoid. It's difficult, costly, and they're often successful, developers are, because if you're subject to this type of lawsuit, it means that you did not comply with COA. Or with the affordable housing rounds. We are not at risk of this right now. I'll explain to this why and how this all factors into the 4th round. But the number one rule here is that it's always in a municipality's best interest to avoid this because you can essentially lose control of your zoning. So here is just history of COA, the prior rounds, affordable housing rounds, and how East Brunswick has complied. First round, consent order was in place 1984. That took the township through 1996. Second round, 1994, 1999, township was granted substantive certification that they had met their requirements in 1997. Third round, 1999 to 2025. This was the last round, and this is where things got a little complicated. Essentially, the last rules for COA were adopted in the 90s, and they were supposed to be updated at various points. They were delayed, then they were invalidated, and the rules were not adopted. So COA was not very functional or functional at all from approximately the late 90s, around 2000 to 2015. And at that point, the state and the judiciary found that they were non-functioning and returned that back to the courts. And that was the process the last round. It was chaotic. It was sort of ad hoc. There was a lot of things that were constantly changing and moving at that time. And the idea was, it was a scramble for a lot of municipalities. There are towns, just this year or have not even yet substantively certified their 3rd round. So it was very complicated, and the idea of the recently adopted 2024 amended Fair Housing Act was to change that, was to make sure that the rules were clearer and expediently put into place. So for the 3rd round, East Brunswick did reach a settlement agreement, adopted the Fair Share Housing Plan, and were granted judgment of compliance 2016. So 4th round, 2025, 2035, this is where we are. And this is what was set into place by the law that was passed last year. So 4th round, we're moving ahead, timeline and the process. So I'm just gonna go over what the baseline is for the 4th round and the work that we, the professionals, the elected officials, what we've been doing to make sure that the township is compliant. So amended Fair Housing Act, this was the law that was adopted last year, March 2024. It was intended to provide a framework for all of this, for it eliminated COA, prohibited COA really from coming back, and it provided some clarity on methodology and calculations. And for our purposes, what we're going to talk about tonight is that it created a method of challenging, of certifying, called the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program. This is a program within the judiciary. It's operated by the Administrative Office of the Courts in Trenton, and it has mediation from via retired judges that throughout the state. And then for each county, there is a Mount Laurel judge who signs off on everything. And I'll go through how we dealt with that earlier this year. It also established timelines and required deadlines in order for municipalities to retain their immunity against those builder's remedy lawsuits. And then one thing, that was a change policy-wise from the prior rounds was that the legislation was specifically encouraged, redevelopment of properties, specifically commercial, office, retail, underperforming properties. It recommended or supported family housing, which really just means anything that's available to a family with children. It can be 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and supportive and special needs housing provision in municipalities. So those are all, just examples of compliance mechanisms that we're going to be using in this round. So this is just, a lot of information here, but this is sort of the calendar that we've been working off of, and you'll see that this starts, everything in purple is dates that we've already hit. The light green is where we are today, and then we have the future. So October, the DCA, Department of Community Affairs, initially issued the municipal obligations. January 2025, the township adopted our obligation, and I'll go into detail about how that was done. Challenges took place in February. We went to the settlement and went through the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program in March and April. And by June 30th, as long as municipalities adopt and endorse the housing element and fair share plan, they are immune from builder's remedy lawsuits. So we are on track for that. The future, we'll see how this is where things are going to be subject to change, but there's going to be challenges, which we anticipate in all municipalities, not just East Brunswick. Anywhere it can be challenged over the summer, resolution by the end of the year, and then final adoption of the implementing ordinances is scheduled to take place by March 2026. So that's, another 9 months ahead of this to where things are, I think we're confident in our plan, but there's also going to be subject to change. So here's where we are now. And just to go through prior round, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this was a required component of the fourth round plan. We had to look at and just, recertify really that we did comply with these previous rounds. So this was the earliest 87 to 99, or this was, the second round. 648 units, the township created 735, carried over 87 to the third round. Third round, because this was such a large period of time, the obligation was 1067 units as a result of the settlement agreement. And the township's been really successful with this. Either a total of 994 units have been approved or constructed, and the remaining 73 that are left between that and 1067, we believe are still valid and developable for future affordable housing, so we will not be making changes to those, and I'll go through that later. And finally, and this is some good news, is that on top of that 1,067, there was an additional 63 credits that the township realized above the third round obligation that can be carried forward to the fourth round. So that's just the background there. And this is the chart of the third round. This is just sort of for reference. We need to come back to it. But again, this was things that were required for the plan. So determining the fourth round obligation. I'm going to go through how we arrived at the number that we have to provide, which is 296, and where we started, what the process was in order to get there. And then finally, we're going to talk about how we were proposing to comply with it. So as mentioned in that time schedule chart that I had up there, in October, DCA issued their non-binding fourth round municipal obligation numbers. And this was a big old spreadsheet and a big old PDF full of methodology that talked about, basically they crunched a bunch of census data, they crunched tax data, they did a review of land use and development in order to get these numbers. And in East Brunswick, the present need which is the rehabilitation of a unit's obligation, was 170. And the prospective need, which is the new construction obligation, was at 314. So prospective need is the big number to focus on here. And this is the share of the regional need. So again, going back to Region 3, Middlesex, Hunterdon, Somerset, based on DCA's projections, the estimate was that over the 10-year fourth round period, that region would require 11,604 units. So East Brunswick's share of that was calculated to be 314 based on a combination of factors. One is the equalized non-residential value. That basically has to do with your commercial land use value. It's a way of measure. It's sort of meant to be an equivalent for jobs in a community. And that's just based really on the tax rolls. So we didn't have, no issue. We took no issue with their calculation there. The next is income capacity, which is a measure of the median income in your municipality as compared to the lowest income municipality in the region. So again, this is really just based on specific data sets that we took no objection to those. And then finally, the last factor is land capacity. And each of these is represented as a percentage of the total share of the region. It's a little complicated, but I think it makes sense how we got this number, why we decided to get this number, why we strove to get this number down, and where we ended up where we were. So the land capacity was measured by DCA as just kind of like clumps of developable land throughout the township. It does not mean parcels that could be developed. It didn't have to do with the zoning of it. It looked at things like, whether it was already developed, whether it was a right-of-way, what the land use was, because it's really only supposed to consider vacant land, which can mean, an open space parcel, because vacant means, like, for example, if it's because it's based on land use land cover data from NJDEP, and it gets very granular, and it's rather inaccurate, because they were doing this from Trenton, and they were trying their best, but you're doing this, and you're doing this with environmental constraints too. You're doing this for the whole state. They could not look at every spec of every town. So that's where we stepped in with Keith Kipp's office, with a lot of help from them, and we did a thorough review of that data. And if you look at the bottom here, they indicated that there were 175 developable acres per that strict definition in the township, and we reduced that to 44.7. By going through and seeing this is classified as vacant, but it's actually the township. It's a water tower, things like that. It's a sewer pump. So, and that's just one example of some of the things that we did there. So, this council adopted a resolution 25-763 in January and accepted the present need number of 170, and this was a binding resolution and sought to reduce the prospective need from 314 to 265. And the 265 is the equivalent percentage reduction of that land capacity factor for the whole region and all of that. So we had to submit all of this methodology to the state and all of our details of our recalculation and the methodological errors. Methodological. I think I got that. So that was where we ended up with initially, as of January, binding resolution 265. However, again, going back to the timeline that was set up, once that was out there, that meant that it could be challenged. It could be challenged by any interested party. In some municipalities, that was the Fair Share Housing Center, which is an advocacy group in South Jersey that was really like a watchdog for this throughout the state. Fair Share Housing Center did not challenge our number. However, the New Jersey Builders Association did. This is basically the trade association that represents mostly residential home builders, but really developers throughout the state. And they challenged not just East Brunswick, they challenged every municipality who had proposed recalculating their number. So it was sort of like a blanket challenge across the board. Because of that, we proceeded through the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program, and this involved a settlement conference held with the with retired Judge Jacobson, who was kind of the mediator there. We have a special adjudicator. Formerly in the last round, they were called special masters. Those are professional planners who are experts in affordable housing. And so, we kind of made our case to them. We were on the call with the Builders Association representatives at certain points, and we did not reach a settlement there because the Builders Association was not willing to give. They wanted the full 314 units, and we said we don't think that that's appropriate for the reasons that we stated. So we had to go back, we had to wait for the judge to make a decision, and Judge Jacobson came back a couple weeks later with the recommendation for 296 units. So higher than we had hoped, but still lower than the 314 that we had initially been given. And this was confirmed by Judge McCloskey, who's the Middlesex County Mount Laurel judge. And then we finally got that confirmed number on April 24th. Bless you. So just go to bottom line, final obligation for the fourth round. Present need of 170, prospective need of 296. And these numbers at this point, barring any sort of major policy change, these numbers are fixed. These are what we're going to be working with for the remainder of this round. So how are we going to meet that? And here is our compliance strategy that we are proposing here, 2025 to 2035. Present need, as I stated, is 170 units. This is the rehabilitation obligation. This is done, in the past, it's been done largely in collaboration with East Brunswick Community Housing Corporation, where they provide, and Susan's here, and they do a lot of incredible work with East Brunswick Community Housing Corporation that has set this township, honestly, really put the township ahead of the game, many other municipalities in terms of provision of affordable housing in past rounds and setting us up on a great foot for the fourth round. So they do some rehab there. And then there's also, as of the third round, the township is partners with the county to provide the housing rehabilitation program. And this is a Middlesex County program. It's actually run, the administrative agent is another affordable housing administrator nonprofit, I believe, that does that. And that is something that is eligible to all township residents. I'm not sure if there's income limit, or if they're eligible for the income limits there or whatever is needed. And that really looks at replacing major systems in the home. So, part of this is that over the 10 years, 170 units for rehabilitation is not, we don't think that's going to be a problem, and just, encourage the council, encourage everybody to ensure that these programs are, made public as much as possible. And also we'll keep an eye out as new things come into play, because there is some money, not so much for rehab, but the state is aware that there's a lot of units that have to be created and maintained and rehabilitated in the next 10 years. So that's for the present need. And then prospective need, the future. So 296 units. On top of that, we continue to provide realistic opportunity for 73 affordable units on inclusionary sites from the third round. These are tracks on Cranberry Road that were rezoned at that time, and that have not been developed, but we, given the current conditions and just, we don't see any issue with keeping them as is, and we continue to meet our obligation, because again, the township has to provide the realistic opportunity, and by rezoning those, that's providing the realistic opportunity. So we are in continuing compliance there. Again, as mentioned, there were also 63 credits that we identified that were over and above the third round plan, which I have listed up here. 13 of those were supportive and special needs rental bedrooms. So that's a total of 26 credits, and we'll go into the bonus credits that are available as well. Then there is Market to Affordable Family Rentals, which is a program of East Brunswick Community Housing Corporation in which they purchase units that are for sale, and they deed restrict them and convert them to affordable rentals. So there was a requirement for 48 units to be acquired as part of the last round, and as of the time of 2016, I believe that they had acquired 38 of those, and so there's been another 20. I think there's almost 21. One more is in the works right now. So so there was over and above the third round requirements. Extended affordability controls for the Commons at Kingswood Station, and we have 4 extra inclusionary units were constructed at Legacy Place as part of the redevelopment. So 63 additional credits. And then we're going to go through the rest. We have various compliance mechanisms, such as some of those are listed above, and then we have the new proposed sites.
We're not going to be discussing proposed sites, are we?
We are going to be talking about very generally, because they're in the plan.
Because I don't think we should be talking about proposed sites in public.
I will leave this to you. It was discussed at the planning board meeting, and it's public record.
I don't,
All of it came out of the planning board.
yeah, well, I don't think it should be public yet, but, you know, if it's already out there, it's out there.
Joe, you have a comment on that one? We can,
So it's the housing element and fair share plan has already been filed with the state because the planning board adopted it. So it's readily available. It's posted online. Nothing in there is really confidential in any way.
thank you.
Yes, and we do have one change that I'll discuss from the planning board, but I will say that the sites that we're going to be discussing tonight, everyone is, they're aware. This is not a surprise to the property owners who will be going forward. So just before we go into this, just briefly talk about bonus credits. This is something that you're going to see up on the screen. And it's a little complicated, but the bonus credit structure was changed from the last round. Previously, the big winner was that if you had a family rental unit, it was a 1-for-1 bonus credit. They got rid of that in the new legislation, but they gave you a ton more bonus credits if you can figure out where to use them. We're doing very well with bonus credits. We actually are maxed out because you can only you do up to 25% of your obligation. So 74 bonus credits are available to the township, which means that 296 units minus 74 bonus credits means that for provision of 222 new units, you're actually getting credit for 296. So, well, that's included in
Right.
that calculation.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll talk about how these apply, but, you know, special needs housing, supportive housing, market to affordable, 100% affordable. And then there's a lot of opportunity for half credits for redevelopment of commercial sites and sites within a half mile of transit, et cetera. So there also is some requirements for unit types. And I put this up here now because this is something, again, where we do have some flexibility over the next few months as we, work on confirming the plan. There are a lot of unit types that are available within the sites that I'm going to talk about. Only a few, but and as long as we stay within these parameters, then there's flexibility for what can be provided. For example, for sites where we may be proposing it for now, we think it may be family affordable rentals. We have enough family units in this plan that those could be able to be subbed out if the opportunity presents itself with veterans housing or some other type of supportive housing or special needs housing. So that's just different. There's a lot of options here as long as we are within these thresholds. And as of now, we well exceed these thresholds. So, and it's really the idea, but with all of these is that you have rentals available and that you make sure that towns have some availability for families. And that is not an issue here with the plan in place. So, going through some of the compliance mechanisms, some of these I already discussed, but the extension of affordability controls was done for Kingswood Station. There were nine units that were not extended in 2016 that were identified, and those were extended. So that means that those for sale units will remain affordable for another 30 years. Market to affordable program, again, Community Housing Corporation, 10 have been done so far as the surplus, and we're proposing 10 additional over the 10-year period of the fourth round. So that will be a total of 40 credits that are available there. Supportive and special needs housing, 13 have been provided. And as I just said, and as I have it listed on here, that's 26 credits in total. And there's the potential, we don't have any listed in the plan right now because we're not aware of the specific opportunities, but if there's the potential for additional bedrooms, additional units, additional developments of this type as the plan is formalized. Compliance mechanism, assisted living facilities. These, since I think about 2002, all assisted living facilities in New Jersey are required to set aside 10% of their beds for Medicaid patients. And those beds are considered as part of meeting the municipality's affordable housing obligation. So since 2017, CARE 1, which is when the last plan ended, last plan was prepared, CARE 1 has been approved and constructed, 10 credits there. Brightview has been approved, 10 credits there. And then the East Brunswick Assisted Living, which was formerly CSH, which is now, I believe Benchmark is the new operator's name, there before the zoning board for amended approval, but we have every inclination that they will continue with that project. So 30 credits were available through assisted living facilities. And again, if any other ones come to the town over the next 10 years, those would also be eligible for additional credits, either for the next round or the fourth round. And then here we have a proposed 100% affordable development with a municipal contribution. This is something that is just in the beginning stages. This would be, the township would be collaborating with a nonprofit developer to provide approximately 26 units, between 25, 30 most likely. As of now, the proposal is townhouses on the former 6th Street bus terminal site. This site is located in an industrial zone right now, but it's adjacent to a residential zone. And actually, there's a stream corridor in the rear that really provides a huge buffer from industrial uses. So that's a good opportunity for, being able to connect it more to the community and not, putting an industrial use here, which currently, on current zoning, it could go there. So this would be a 100% affordable development with, the municipality would sponsor it, and that they would be working with the nonprofit developer to give the land, and that entitles the plan to double bonus credits. So if it's 26 units, that would be 26 bonus credits for 52 in total. So that is this is something that details will be coming into place. We will have to, there'll be many other, for this project and anything else that comes to fruition, all of these will have to be rezoned, which would entail, full public hearing before council, planning board, everything. So this is just very, very initial phase of this process. And none of this is, no actions being taken to do this tonight. It's just our proposed compliance. Second is more inclusionary zoning and redevelopment. And this is where we do have one change from the plan that was reviewed by the planning board. We have eliminated one site that was proposed for inclusion then, which was the Route 18 lumber / Plaza Hill office building. That is no longer considered to present a realistic opportunity at this time and will be replaced. One option, we have not formalized this via zoning, nothing's proposed to be changed, would be potentially Ferris Farms over on Cranberry Road, which there was prior interest in that for a townhouse development, something like that. So that is a potential site that would be included for inclusionary zoning. And then the other two sites that we have would be the Brunswick Square Mall, potential residential redevelopment, and the Arisa property on Main Street, just west of 18, behind the development that was part of that was constructed in about 2020, 2022. So again, all of these are at the very nascent stages of what would be there. Our goal is that all development will be it will all be complementary to the surrounding area. It will be, the density will be appropriate for the sites, and it will still, in combination, provide approximately 120 units, 45 bonus credits, 160 credits. And this is, this is kind of the something that will be, you'll see this, whether it's a redevelopment plan for the mall, this is something else that will come way before the council several times. So there is a lot of opportunity for both public comment for all of these parcels, and everyone will, it'll all be part of the public record, what's going to go here once that's determined. And to be honest, we don't really know what that's gonna look like until we get this plan formalized and see if we have any challenges to it, but this is what we are proposing now. So the density is to be determined, and the set aside is to be determined if they are inclusionary zones. So that is really the summary of what we have. So if you look up here, this is everything that I just went through. I know it's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of numbers. If you look at, for example, the bonus credit table, that doesn't add up to 74, but we're capped at 74. But that is really the summary of where we are, what has been done so far, what we are proposing, and what the next steps will be. So, if happy to answer any questions, whether about, where we are right now, what this, the council is doing tonight, or what needs to be done in the future. So thank you all for your time.
Council, any questions?
I have one.
Yes, you could
So
have 10.
in the timeline that you presented, you were talking about from now until March of 2026, right, going forward? Like the challenges, what would be some of the challenges that would potentially, that we would have to face?
Sure. So
Yeah.
it would be similar to, in some ways, it would be similar to the similar parties that challenged their numbers earlier. So we anticipate maybe the New Jersey Builders Association, maybe Fair Share Housing, maybe a separate developer. Like as an example, there's some towns that had more developers interested in properties than they had units that needed to be built. And basically what these groups, whether it's organizations or developers, they're going to look through the plan, see if they can find flaws, whether that is, some may be in good faith reviews, some may not be. We'll see what it turns out like, and then they have to file a challenge in due time stating what they think the plan's deficiencies are. And then we'll go through that process again with the dispute resolution program, the judge, et cetera.
So one and done doesn't work, right?
No.
All right, thank you, that was
Sure.
helpful.
The, Ms. Keller, the presentation was outstanding and overwhelming. I don't know how you retain all that information, but
With much difficulty.
it's a credit to your professionalism.
Thank you.
I did want to recognize we have quite a few people in the audience who have a interest in the welfare of our community, and they would be Susan Fine from the Housing Corporation, Wilbur Pan, Mary Pan. Wilbur is a Board of Ed member, and Mary's part of the Planning Board. Mr. Larry Sachs, who was an attorney for the Planning Board, Charlie Heppel, former president of the chairman of the Zoning Board, Keith Kipp, who you mentioned quite frequently, and I hope I didn't leave any. Oh, I see Jeff Smith from the Zoning Board. So we see a lot of people from the community who have a vested interest in the direction that we're going. My questions were all answered. So I
Great.
was very serious about veteran housing as this all comes to fruition. Special needs housing, and there's no one who's going to disagree with me on those two issues. The bonus plan that you talked about at our planning board meeting, as well as tax subsidies. And the only question that resonates is it's going to be the public relations portion of this plan here in East Brunswick to make sure that we comply with not just these numbers because they're numbers, but for the welfare of the community. I would like to ask, though, if we could get a hard copy of the PowerPoint presentation. I'm looking at Mr. Kipp. If each one of the council members could have that in their notes. So whenever you get around to that, that's not
Absolutely.
tomorrow. But again, thank you very much, Ms. Keller.
Thank you for your time, Council President.
Oh, Mayor, I didn't see you.
Thank you, Council President. Again, thank you for the presentation. You heard a good portion of this the other day at the Planning Board. As most of you know, some of you have been through this the last round, so this is a controversial topic, as Kate said from the very beginning. It is hotly talked about throughout the state. It is hotly talked about on social media circles here in the township, and the decisions that we make, which is only the start of this now. Eventually, you're going to have to decide on the zoning changes for whatever plan we go ahead with. This process is just very difficult to understand, and it gets very often complicated and misinterpreted in the public. And I don't think that the biggest issue people have is with the need for affordable housing anybody that has a kid coming out of college and wants to try to live in New Jersey or just tries to upgrade and move into New Jersey, it's a very expensive state. I think the biggest problem they have is the number of full-price units that come in when a builder sets aside a percentage for their affordables, and then we bring in the full-price units, and now we're talking about a large number of apartments that are coming into the township, and that's what gets everybody, I think, upset. As I mentioned earlier, there's things that the state could have done that they don't do that I think puts us in this position, most towns, not just East Brunswick, where they could have looked at people that no longer qualify for units, and we don't do a good job of doing that. So people who are in units and no longer really meet the income requirements, we don't do a good job of following up on those individuals and allowing them the opportunity to leave and make those units available to people that qualify. But that all having been said, we have a phenomenal housing community housing corporation here that has done this almost back to the beginning of the Mount Laurel decision in 1975. I think our housing corporation's been around about that long. And while it may not have started for that reason, it started because of the Victory Gardens, but ultimately it served the purpose of helping us provide affordable housing and keeping our number very reasonable and in a way that gives people who need these units dignity, that the whole world doesn't need to know where they are, who they are, where they're living. And they've done that seamlessly for decades. And so that we owe them a debt of gratitude. When you look at other towns that are similarly sized to ours, if you looked at the fourth round obligation that came out, they were significantly higher than what our obligation was here in East Brunswick. Same thing, by the way, for the third round. Some towns argued and went to court, and such as, well, I'm not going to name the towns, but, and they were penalized for having done that because they weren't keeping up with their obligation. And so when you look at our number and really look at that massive spreadsheet, the number that we have, well, we will do what we're obligated to do, and I think that we're here really to start that first process right now with the simple adoption of this plan that will be worked on over the next couple of months. But we absolutely, under no circumstance, want to be in a position ever where builders who already demonstrated to us that they weren't even happy with the 265 that we thought was reasonable, they couldn't agree with that, took us to court. Not going to ever let the builders have control of this township by going to builders' remedies, which essentially allows them to go to the court to contest anything that we don't agree to, and then bypass entirely our land use boards, which I believe have done a phenomenal job of making sure that we keep to our obligations and keep to our master plan. That's their role. And failure for us to adopt this tonight puts us in a position of allowing builders to come in and do basically anything they want in this township. I can't imagine how you would want to do that. So thank you again for your presentation and for explaining this complicated topic to the public.
My pleasure.
Mr. Criscuolo, any final thoughts? Because you did play a big role in this whole process.
Just really a big team effort, including you, Council President. When we did have to appear in court, hats off to Kate too. Sometimes we found out at 3 o'clock one afternoon that we had to be in court the next morning at 10, and then we found out that they changed it to 1:30. You know, we're all sitting around, and it was nice that we got the support of the council president. I think that helped out with the special adjudicator that, you know, we had administration there with our planner, and that the council president was in presence. So I think they were impressed that not only that the administration and our planner, the mayor, and the governing body was actively involved in making sure of this. The one thing that I also want to point out to the general public, affordable housing is not Section 8 housing. That often gets confusing with people. There's not housing vouchers, there's none of that goes out. I know Kate knows the distinct difference of this. The importance, once again, as the mayor said, getting this done tonight, is we have a June 30th cutoff date. Tomorrow, hopefully, when this gets approved, Joseph will take the approved resolution and the adopted plan that we have before us, and we'll submit it to the court as follow-up to that. And each one of these organizations, these watch groups, are sitting there waiting to look at that, and they're also sitting there waiting to see who doesn't submit it on June 30th. Now, I know quite a few other towns have submitted their plan. Joe and his team at Hoagland have done 4 or 5 of them already, so I'm confident they'll get it submitted tomorrow expeditiously, because he knows I'm going to call him about 2:30 to ensure that it is, and I'm going to want the receipt. But just thanks to everybody on the team, the planning board, Mr. Sachs, naturally the mayor, and you, the council, that's also been very supportive and seeking to be knowledgeable on this topic. It is a difficult topic. I mean, I've been doing this job for over 20 years, and I've gone through this process in 3 different municipalities. So that's all I have to say. And once again, thank to everybody for their support, and everybody in the room that I won't mention again, but it's arduous.
Council President?
Yes, please.
I thought that was a terrific presentation. It clarified a lot of questions I've always had about the process and what was
Great.
going on. I don't want to belabor this issue because I know it's a presentation, but I do think the public might just want a brief explanation of how these properties are identified as the planning board. How do they come about deciding which properties are ones that they want to seek out for redevelopment?
Sure. So the only properties, there's really only 3 that are part of this plan now. The first, with the mall, the Brunswick Square Mall, they're, as far, I don't know the details of it, but I know that the property owner was interested in pursuing a mixed-use development there. We started off by declaring it an area needed redevelopment earlier this year. No redevelopment plan has been, proposed, nothing like that. So there's still, a lot of debate, not debate, but, there's still a lot of details that will be ironed out there, including, how much of the site will be used for residential, like what kind of residential that might be, whether it'll be inclusionary, whether it'll be some kind of supportive housing, something like that. But so there's a lot of options there. The Arisa site on Main Street, that was also something where the property owner was interested and approached the municipality. They approached us with what they wanted on the site. We said, okay, we'll think about it. But we think it's an appropriate site for affordable housing, and we'll be working with them over the next few months to, see what work on a density, what this exact set aside will be, et cetera. And then finally, there's a few other sites that we had looked at around the township. And initially we had looked at some on Route 18 just because it's centrally located. That has that's been eliminated at this point. We're gonna have to formally amend the plan in the next couple of weeks, but as long as we hit this June deadline, we're fine. And again, no formal action. And I believe the owners of Ferris Farms, they had previously been interested in redeveloping it, and that under a different developer. That person, as far as I'm aware, they are no longer involved, but the property owners also are interested in pursuing this. So that's how those came to be. So we feel confident that those are, we're going to have a cooperative process in setting forward, how they're going to be rezoned.
Thank you.
Sure. And I would also note, and this goes to what the mayor stated, those are, as of now, those are the only properties where we are proposing inclusionary, which means, about usually 20% set aside. So, and that's only about half the plan. So the remainder of the plan as of now, and there's room for to change this even more so, can be met without, that type of inclusionary development that gives you 4 market rate units for every affordable. So I think that was a goal. And also looking at, not focusing on, developing big greenfield sites, open space, things like that, really focusing on redevelopment as much as possible per the state directives. So,
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Keller.
Sure. Thank you all. Appreciate
Okay.
your time.
Thank you.